In a household where 3 generations lived together, the grandmother suddenly began to feel exhausted and suffered from persistent insomnia. The grandfather, on the other hand, often experienced a heavy feeling in his head and emotional instability, even though there was no clear medical reason. All of these changes started to happen right after the family hung a strangely shaped wall clock, distorted with many sharp angles. Since that oddly shaped clock was placed on the wall, the atmosphere inside the house began to shift in a way that anyone living with elderly family members could sense. Its ticking sound was irregular, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, creating a kind of silent pressure that made the space feel tenser and heavier than before. For older people, the nervous system is especially sensitive to environmental factors, such as repetitive sounds, sharp-edged shapes, and reflective light. That is why the presence of an object with an irregular design in a shared living space can directly affect their emotional well-being, their sleep, and even their sense of security. This impact is very real, even if not everyone notices it right away. And because of these subtle yet powerful effects, choosing the right clock and hanging it in the correct place becomes incredibly important, especially in homes with elderly people. In this video, you will learn exactly which types of clocks you should avoid and the key principles for placing a clock that will help create a lighter, more stable atmosphere, one that supports the mental and emotional health of older family members. Before we continue, take a moment to speak a positive affirmation out loud. It will bring a sense of peace and help make your living space feel more comfortable every single day. My family is welcoming peace and good health. And do not forget to subscribe to the channel so you can keep discovering more Feng Shui insights that help the flow of energy in your home stay light, steady, and supportive of your family's well-being. Now, let us take a deeper look at the types of clocks you should avoid hanging in your home, because these specific designs can unintentionally create a heavy atmosphere and put subtle pressure on the emotional well-being of elderly family members. The first type of clock: distorted, deformed, or overly artistic clocks. Clocks with warped shapes, twisted forms, or designed in an overly avant-garde artistic style might catch the eye at first glance. But when placed in a calm, balanced living space, they often break the visual harmony. A typical home is built upon the balance of walls, ceilings, doors, and furniture. Everything has a certain structure and visual order. When a twisted, slanted, or oddly shaped clock is mounted on the wall, it immediately grabs our attention, but not in a pleasant way. Instead, it causes a moment of visual discomfort. The brain needs extra time to process the unnatural shape, interrupting the natural flow of how we perceive the space around us. From a Feng Shui perspective, every object in a home influences people through 2 things: visual perception and the energetic rhythm of the space. A deformed object offers no visual anchor, no point of balance for the eyes to settle on. And when the eyes cannot find a resting point, the brain receives no signal of safety. This creates what is known as mild visual stress. Over time, if experienced daily, it can disrupt emotional stability. Younger people usually adapt quickly, but for the elderly, especially those who spend much of their time at home, the effects are stronger. They may feel irritated, restless, or uneasy, without even knowing why. Older individuals tend to be more sensitive to light, color, shapes, and even the smallest changes in their surroundings. They move more slowly, pay closer attention, and often observe their daily environment unconsciously. When a visually disruptive object like a distorted clock is always within their line of sight, it is not the intensity, but the repetition that causes discomfort. Each time their eyes pass over the clock, even for just a few seconds, the brain registers that imbalance. Over time, this repetition creates a sense of insecurity and makes relaxation harder to achieve. As time goes on, this kind of sensory discomfort can directly impact overall health. When the mind cannot fully relax, the body cannot enter a natural recovery state. This may result in prolonged fatigue, trouble sleeping, difficulty concentrating, or increased sensitivity to sounds. This does not mean the clock carries negative energy, but rather that it disrupts the harmony of the space, something Feng Shui principles place great importance on. A room with balanced layout supports the body's natural rhythms. In contrast, a misshaped object placed in a prominent spot throws the room off rhythm, and it is the person living in that room who ends up adjusting to the imbalance. The second type of clock, clocks with sharp edges and pointed corners. Clocks that have multiple sharp corners, such as triangular shapes, star-shaped designs, or metal frames with exposed edges, can create a strong visual reaction from the very first glance. While they may look stylish in a modern decor setting, when placed in everyday family living spaces, especially where elderly people reside, these sharp points can trigger visual tension. The human eye naturally prefers curves and soft surfaces, as those shapes are more familiar in nature. Sharp angles, on the other hand, send subtle alert signals to the brain, pushing the body toward a state of alertness instead of relaxation. In terms of practical feng shui, objects with sharp points aimed toward the room tend to block or redirect the line of sight. This creates an unconscious sense of discomfort, even if the people living there do not realize it. A well-designed living space should allow the eyes to move smoothly, without interruption from jarring or harsh shapes. When a clock with multiple sharp angles is placed in a prominent location, it becomes an unconscious source of pressure. People nearby may find themselves feeling restless or unable to sit still in that area. For elderly individuals, sharp and jagged visual stimuli tend to have stronger effects, since they often fix their gaze on familiar, unmoving objects around the house. Every time they look at a clock with sharp corners pointing directly at them, the brain picks up a mild stress signal, making it harder for them to relax completely. Over time, this can cause sensations like heaviness in the head, eye fatigue, or a vague sense of discomfort in rooms with that type of clock, without a clear explanation. From a biological standpoint, the mind cannot soften when it is constantly exposed to angular, aggressive shapes. Repeated exposure to these kinds of stimuli can affect the daily rhythm of elderly family members. They may spend less time in the living room, pace around more often, have trouble falling asleep if the clock is near the bedroom, or become more sensitive to sounds and movements around them. This is not a spiritual issue. It is simply the body responding to a space filled with visual stress. A home that brings comfort to the elderly should emphasize softness, roundness, and calm. Sharp edges on a clock directly oppose that idea, removing the sense of warmth and safety that older people deeply need. The third type of clock, oversized clocks with exaggerated proportions. Oversized clocks are often used as statement pieces, but in the living space of an average family, they can easily throw off the balance of the entire room. A clock that takes up too much wall space becomes visually dominant. It fills the view and makes the room feel unconsciously smaller, especially in compact rooms or those with soft lighting. From a feng shui perspective, an oversized clock creates a mismatch in proportion between people and the objects around them. When you look at a large clock, Your eyes have to move more to scan its entire surface. The brain then processes more information than usual, from numbers, hands, and decorative elements to the negative space around the clock face. This results in mild visual overload. While younger people might not notice, older individuals, who are used to moderate, easy-to-read objects, can feel this sensory overload gradually as fatigue whenever they spend time near the clock. For elderly individuals, a large clock can also trigger an unintended sense of pressure. The bigger an object is, the more dominant its presence becomes. And when that object is placed at the center of a room, it unintentionally creates a psychological weight. Older people usually prefer spaces that are light, open, and free of dominant features. Places where they can relax easily. An oversized clock contradicts that need. It can even create the feeling of being watched or constantly reminded of time in a stressful way, especially during quiet evenings. Over time, the sense of pressure from an oversized clock may cause elderly people to avoid that room. They might talk less, spend less time resting there, or experience mild emotional tension. If the clock is placed near the bedroom, it may interfere with sleep. The shared living space gradually loses its natural comfort. This is not something mysterious or superstitious. It is simply the human body responding to an object that is too large for the environment it is in. The fourth type of clock. Clocks with dark faces and jerky ticking movements. Clocks with very dark faces, such as black, deep gray, or those with poor contrast between the hands and background, can visually weigh down a room the moment someone walks in. A dark clock face absorbs light instead of reflecting it, creating a visual shadow in that part of the wall. Older people often need strong, clear lighting to see properly, so when they have to look at a dark clock, their eyes must strain or squint. Over time, this becomes tiring and uncomfortable. From a Feng Shui standpoint, a dark clock face disturbs the balance of light, an essential element in living spaces for elderly people. When a dark object sits directly in their line of sight, it gives the room a sunken feeling. The contrast between light and dark becomes exaggerated, forcing the eyes to adjust constantly, especially in the late afternoon or evening, leading to sensations like a heavy head or low energy, even if the cause is not immediately obvious. If the dark clock also has a ticking hand that moves in abrupt, jerky steps, the discomfort increases. This kind of ticking is not smooth. It is segmented. Each tick acts like a tiny jolt that disrupts the brain's relaxed state. Younger people may not notice it, but for the elderly, who are sensitive to both sound and movement, living near something that produces constant interruptions makes it harder to fully unwind. The combination of a dark face and jerky ticking often creates a space that feels hard to settle into. Over time, it can lead to scattered moods, difficulty concentrating, and visual fatigue. As night falls, the dark face of the clock becomes more prominent, standing out like a heavy patch on the wall, and the ticking grows more noticeable. The room begins to feel smaller and more tense. This is not about bad energy or superstition. It is the natural effect of light, color, and movement on the human sense of comfort, especially for elderly people. Now that you understand which types of clocks can weigh down a space and affect the comfort of elderly family members, the next important step is learning how to hang a clock in a way that keeps your home feeling light and balanced. The first rule: clock shapes. Clocks that are round, square, or octagonal are considered harmonious shapes, not because of luck or superstition, but because the human eye naturally receives them in the most comfortable way. In any living space, whether it is a living room, bedroom, or hallway. Balance in shape creates a sense of order and calm. These shapes have clear, structured lines that are easy to look at and do not overwhelm the senses. This makes a big difference, especially for elderly individuals who need peace more than anyone else in the home. A circular shape, with its continuous curve, gives off a sense of flow and softness. When the eyes move along a circular object, there is no abrupt stop or sharp angle to interrupt the visual experience. For older people, this is even more important. A round shape allows the eyes to glide gently, helping the body relax more naturally. A well-placed round clock can make the entire room feel more harmonious, avoiding the stiffness that complex-shaped clocks often bring. The square shape gives off a very different feeling: stability, clarity, and reliability. It works well for elderly people who are used to structure and order in their living space. When they look at a square clock, their eyes find clear stopping points at each corner, making it easy for the brain to recognize the shape without much effort. That stability provides a sense of reassurance, like a steady rhythm grounding the room and helping elderly family members feel more at ease. An octagon is a balanced blend of curves and straight lines. The shorter sides soften the sharpness of the angles while still maintaining a clear structure. In everyday Feng Shui, the octagon is often seen as a shape that brings balance because it spreads attention evenly in all directions and does not feel off-centered. Placed in a room, an octagonal clock acts like a visual stabilizer. It brightens, tidies, and softens the space. For the elderly, this shape often brings a feeling of calm because it is not too rigid like a square, nor too soft like a circle. It offers just the right visual harmony that older eyes appreciate. The second rule: placement of the clock. Where you hang a clock is just as important as its shape. The placement determines how people visually and emotionally interact with the space every day. Even the most beautiful clock can create tension if it is hung in the wrong spot, especially in dim corners or areas where family activity constantly flows. According to practical Feng Shui, a clock should always be placed where it is easy to see, but never in a way that makes it feel like a source of pressure. When hung correctly, a clock adds rhythm, spaciousness, and comfort to a room. The best places to hang a clock are bright hallways, airy living rooms, or common areas with plenty of natural light. These are spaces where people move about often, so the presence of a clock brings a gentle pace to the household. When the light is evenly distributed, the clock blends naturally into the wall and does not strain the eyes of elderly individuals. It is also important to hang the clock at a comfortable height so that checking the time does not cause visual stress. On the other hand, areas like an elderly person's bedroom, above the bed, or in dark corners of the home are not ideal places for a clock. In a bedroom especially, a ticking clock, or one with visible jerky movement, can break the stillness that older people need for restful sleep. In poorly lit corners, the clock draws attention but is hard to see, forcing older eyes to strain and work harder. Hanging a clock too close to eye level or directly across from a resting spot can also make it feel like time is watching you, something many elderly people are especially sensitive to. Over time, poor clock placement can disrupt the natural rhythm of family life. Elderly members may avoid areas with the clock, feel uneasy resting nearby, or sense that the room feels off without knowing why. But when placed correctly, the opposite happens. The room feels balanced and inviting. The rhythm is there, but it is gentle even and pressure-free. This has nothing to do with superstition. It is simply about how people interact with their surroundings and how the right object in the right place creates harmony for the entire household. The third rule: keep your clocks running. A clock in the home is more than just a tool to tell time. It sets the pace for the entire living space. When a clock is running smoothly, the room feels like it is subtly in motion, like everything is ticking along with a familiar rhythm. But when a clock stops, especially if it remains stopped for a long time, it creates a strange stillness in the area around it, a kind of stagnant energy that is hard to explain. This is not about superstition. It is simply that when something designed to move stops working, the brain picks up on that sense of lifelessness in the room. On a practical level, a stopped clock feels out of sync with the rest of the space. When elderly people see a clock that is no longer ticking, they subconsciously register that something is off. This can create mild feelings of discomfort or unease. Older individuals often rely more heavily on clocks to manage their daily routines. So, when a clock stops, they can quickly feel disoriented, unsure about mealtimes, sleep schedules, or when to take medications. This interruption in their rhythm affects them more than it would affect younger people. If a stopped clock is in a shared space like the living room or dining room, it can even reduce the room's overall sense of liveliness. A motionless second hand, a frozen clock face. These small details may go unnoticed by some, but they subtly affect how the room feels. This is why some people describe these spaces as feeling heavy, quiet, or lifeless when there is a broken clock in them. The impact is especially noticeable for elderly family members, who are more sensitive to environmental changes and are more likely to feel uneasy when the rhythm of life around them becomes inconsistent. In the long run, a non-functioning clock can throw off the daily routines of older people. They might sleep at the wrong times, eat off schedule, or forget important time-related tasks. A working clock helps maintain a subtle but clear rhythm in the space, one that older people rely on to stay grounded and balanced. So keeping your clocks running is not about following a Feng Shui ritual. It is simply a way to maintain order and continuity in the family's daily life. A little-known secret: you can use clocks to invite prosperity. In practical Feng Shui, a clock is more than a timekeeper. It symbolizes the movement and rhythm of energy throughout your home. When a clock runs smoothly and is placed correctly, it gives the space a feeling of flow, something that prevents the home from feeling stagnant or heavy. This sensation strongly influences the mindset and productivity of everyone in the house. When the rhythm of life is clear and steady, everyone, especially elderly family members, feels more at ease, and that peace of mind becomes the foundation for better fortune and success in daily life. Using clocks to attract prosperity is not about placing them in a magical direction. It is about placing them where they support a smooth, organized rhythm for the entire household. Areas like the east or southeast parts of a home are traditionally associated with growth and prosperity in classical Feng Shui. But in modern living, these are also the places that often receive good light and are easy to see. A clock in a bright, visible location helps everyone manage time better, which leads to more discipline and productivity, two very real factors that contribute to a household's financial well-being. The sound of the clock also plays a role. A quiet, steady ticking sound keeps the energy of a room light and undisturbed. In contrast, clocks that tick too loudly, too fast, or too sharply can disrupt the mental state of elderly family members, making the household rhythm feel scattered. When choosing a clock to support prosperity, prioritize one with smooth movement and a gentle sound. That quiet regularity helps clear the mind, streamline chores, and lead to better decisions in everyday life. Over time, using clocks to attract prosperity means using them as tools to build healthy habits, clearly marking the time, promoting a sense of order, and encouraging the family to live in a more organized way. For older individuals, an easy-to-read clock placed in the right spot helps them maintain consistent routines for rest and meals. And when everyone in the house lives with steady rhythms, prosperity is no longer a vague concept. It becomes the natural result of a well-balanced, energized home. In Feng Shui, any object that helps maintain a healthy daily rhythm is considered valuable, and clocks are among the clearest examples. When you choose the right shape, place it in a bright spot, keep it running, and use its rhythm to support your family's routines, the home feels lighter, cleaner, and more pleasing to the eye. When the clock does not create pressure, but instead becomes a gentle part of the room, feelings of relaxation and stability begin to spread to every corner of the house. Elderly family members sleep better, rest more easily, and feel more at peace. And from that stability, good health, smoother living, and financial blessings are quietly nurtured, not through rituals or complex beliefs, but simply by allowing your space to remain balanced in the right way. Before we wrap up, drop a positive comment below to help keep the good energy flowing. My home always stays balanced and peaceful. And if you want to keep discovering simple, practical Feng Shui insights that you can easily apply to daily life, do not forget to subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for the next videos.